Okay, everyone. Good morning. Today's Daf Yomi is Yevamos Daf Kuf Yevamos 100, and we're going to start on the bottom of Tzadi Tes and Abay's 99b, around 8 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, Asara Ein Cholkin Lahem Truma Abay Sekvaros. There are 10 people who don't, 10 categories of people who don't divide up the Truma in the granary. These are the 10 categories of people who don't get the truma in the granary. The cheresh, the deaf mute, the shota, the minor, the cheresh, the shota, the one who's not of sound mind, the katan, the minor, the tumtum, the one whose genitalia are covered up, the androgynous, the person who apparently has two genitalia, two different privates, the ha'eved, slave, a Canaanite slave, Isha, a woman, Arel, a person who's uncircumcised, Tameh, a person who's ritually impure, and the person who married a woman who is disqualified. The Kohen who married a woman is not allowed to marry, i.e., a divorcee, for example. So the Gemara says, in all these cases, even though we don't divide up the granaries for them on the floor, nevertheless, we send it to their homes and they can eat in their homes, except for the uncircumcised one, because the uncircumcised one, he's not allowed to eat it, but he's allowed to feed it to his wife and to his servants. Anyway, we see from here, what's the reason for all these cases? We send it all to their homes. So the only people who are not allowed to send it to their homes is the rich person who's ritually impure, and the one who married a woman who is not appropriate for him, or he's disqualified from. So the Gemara says, let's analyze these cases. Bishama makes sense. Let's say it makes sense to tell us why cheresh, shota, v'katan, why the cheresh, the shota, and the katan, why these categories we don't divide up the truma to them, because lav b'nei de'aninu, because they're not of sound mind, and it's Rashi says it's disrespectful to the truma to give it out to them. Truma is such a holy item, a privilege to give it out to these people who are not of sound mind in front of everybody. It might not be able to maintain its sanctity. That's what Rashi says. I mean, that's what Tosfos seems to imply. So they won't be able to guard it properly. So if that's the case, that those are the reasons why we don't give it to them. Tumtum androgynous nami. The tumtum and the androgynous also, period b'fnei atzman in him. They are their own creatures, and so for that reason, it's also zilusa the kachim. It's also disrespectful to the truma to give it out to them. So the Gemara says, well, what's the reason why we don't give it? And evanami, we also understand. So we've explained why we don't give it out to the cheresh, shota, the katan, and also not to the tumtum and the androgynous. All these people, it's zilusa, it's disrespectful to the truma, and also the slave. Dama asil asuki mitrumol yofsin. The slave also, we might come to elevate him if we see him getting the truma in the granary. Then we might think he's a Kohen, and we might come to elevate him from the truma to the yofsin. So we've seen why 6 of them, why we don't get the truma in the field. But RL, the Tameh, and now 7 and 8, the RL and the Tameh, why don't we give it to the person who's uncircumcised and the one who's Tameh? Mishum Demi'ise, because there is something they're basically wrong with their bodies, repulsive, i.e. is either not circumcised or is ritually impure. And no say Isha Shein. So number 9, why don't we give to the one who married a woman he's not allowed to? Mishum Kinasa, because we're penalizing him. Ela Isha my time. Why don't we give it to the woman? Why can't the woman get the truma in the granary? So the Gemara says, Pligi Barav Papa Ravuna Braid Rav Yeshua. It's a dispute between Rav Papa and Ravuna Braid Rav Yeshua. Chadam Mishum Gerusha. One says the reason is because he's divorced. Mishum Gerusha, because what's going to happen is we're concerned that she might come after she's divorced and say, I'm still married to the Kohen. She has the right to eat the truma while she's married to the Kohen. But if he divorced her, she lost that right. So therefore, we're concerned that she might say she's still married after she's divorced. Or alternatively, a different theory is Mishum Yichud, that we're worried if she's going to come get the truma, it's going to lead to moments of seclusion with the farmer, and that's inappropriate. Gemara says, "My Benaya, what's the difference between these two approaches?" Well, the difference between them is Ika Benayo Beidari de Mekarev Lamaso. The people live right next to the city. But there's not a lot of people there. So there, if the concern is that we don't know she's divorced, since you're right near the city, you get the daily newspaper. So you'll know she's divorced, but there's still not a lot of people by that farm, and so therefore it could be yichud. Or inami de merachik, or maybe you're far away, and so you don't know if she was divorced. But it's a place where people come to collect the food, and there's no yichud. And then we said that the Brisa said, each of these cases, you could send it to their homes to collect. You send the truma up to their homes, even though you don't give them out to them in the granary. You don't send it to the home of the person who's tameh, or to the home of the person who married a woman he's not allowed to. But to the person who's uncircumcised, and Rashi explains why is he uncircumcised. Rashi says he's uncircumcised because his brothers died during circumcision. So to that person you send it. My time, it happened. He had no ability to prevent it. His brothers died during circumcision. There's a very good reason why he's not circumcised. He still can't eat the truma because it's a technical point. But nevertheless, we say that he's honest, and so therefore we could send it to his home for him to feed his wife and children. Well, the Gemara says, "Tamei nami honest." Well, if the person is ritually impure, that's because who knows why? He might have just accidentally, a dead person might have died in his arms. So why would we say that he can't get the truma to his home, to be sent to his home? So the Gemara says, "Ha nefesh unsa v'haylo nefesh unsa." In the case of the oral, he's got a greater degree of onus. There's less he could do to prevent the situation. So therefore, since he's a much better excuse, we send it to his home, but not to the one who was tamei. We don't send it to his home. It says in the Brisa that the slave and the woman, we don't give them out the truma in the granary. And in the place where we do give it out, we give it to the woman initially, and then we immediately send her home. But the Gemara says this doesn't make any sense. Ma'ika Amar. We said we don't give it to her, and then we said in the place where we give it to her, we give it to her first. Gemara says in a scenario in a city where they give out the meiser to the poor person after you give out the other tithes, the ones who live in the field, then you give that tithe to the poor. So in that place, and that's usually done in the house. So there you give to the woman first. My time, mishum zehusa. It's disrespectful to the woman to have to wait for the men to get their food, and so therefore we don't want to embarrass the woman. So therefore we give it to her first. The Gemara says that Amarava Miresha Kiavilasa Gavra, the Isis Aladina Kamaya first, when a man and a woman would come for a judgment in front of me, meaning the woman would have a claim against a different person, and the man would also have a claim. At first, Have Sharina Tigra, the Gavra Beresha. At first, what I would do is I would listen to the man's claim first, before the woman's, because my time, because I said the mechayiv amina, the mechayiv b'mitzvos, because I said since the man is commanded to do more mitzvos, I'm better off judging his case first. But then I heard even the shamana, but then I heard just the opposite, even the shamana laha. But then I heard that you don't make the woman wait for the meiser ani. So then Sharina Tigra, the Isis Aberesha. Then I heard the woman's claims first, the woman's case first. My time was Shem Tizilusa, because it's disrespectful to her to make her wait around for the case to be heard. So we had said in our Mishnah that if the person has children mixed up, and one was from a Kohen and one was from a slave, that under those circumstances, if they free each other when they get older, then they adopt the stringencies of both. But the Gemara said, Shecharu, that implies the way they use the expression, it means if they want to free her, they can. If they want to free each other, they can. Ibayi and Ilo by low. but that they're not required to. This contradicts something we learned in Chagin and Chagiga, that they're actually required to free each other because, or else they can't get married. It should be a requirement because since we're not sure if he's a slave or a Kohen, he can't marry an Eved, he can't marry a woman who's a slave or who's free. So the Gemara says, so that's what Rava says. Read it that they force him to free each other. That's what Kofen is. So we force them to free each other. And then we say we give them the stringencies of both being a Kohen and a Israelite. Gemara says, for what halacha do we need is that we give them the stringencies of both. So Amar Papa Lamin Chasam. If you give a grain offering, so the halacha is there's a fundamental distinction between the grain offering, the mincha offering of the Kohen and the non-Kohen. The non-Kohen brings a grain offering. What does that mean? You take a scoop from the grain. The Kohen takes a scoop. That's called a kamitza. He scoops it up like this. And then he burns that scoop on the altar, and the rest of it, which is called the shirayim, the rest of the grain is eaten by the Kohen. That's it for a non-Kohen's offering. But for the Kohen's offering, everything is entirely burned on the altar. So says Rav Papa, the kmetz is kaminchas Yisrael. So we're teaching that you have the stringencies of both, and it relates to the mincha, that you do the kamitza like the mincha of regular Israelite, but it's not eaten kaminchas kohanim, like the mincha of the kohanim. So you get the stringencies of both. So the Gemara says, "Hakeitzad." How do you do this? Hakometz karvatz. Well, the kometz first you scoop out and you burn that. And then you have the remnants, and they're also brought on their own. So the Gemara says, but that's a problem. Ikri kan. We have a problem that this contradicts a verse, a teaching that we had in Zvachim. And what does it say there? Kol shemimenu ishim hareu b'bal taktiru. That anything, and basically, it states. We'll read the Rashi. Rashi says, "Heichim matzar miktar ulu shirayim." How can you bring the shirayim as an offering? Maybe it comes from the offering of the regular Israelite. And then we have a principle, you're not allowed to burn the remnants if they're real shirayim, because it says, meaning to say that we need to burn only something that is right to be burnt. And the shirayim are in this concept of Baal Taktiru. So you're not allowed to burn the shirayim. So how are we able to do it? So Amar Rabbi, back to the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Uda Breder Shum and Pazi, the Masiklu Ashum Eitzim. So he says, you're burning it, but not as an offering, but as just fuel. You're just burning the shirayim as like wood. So that's the basic idea. And so look at we'll read the Rashi in a moment, but the Gemara says, "Kib Rabbi Eliezer," like Rabbi Eliezer taught the Tanya, because we learned in a brayso. Rabbi Eliezer Omer l'reach michochi atamaleh. You're not allowed to burn it as an offering of atamaleh l'shum eitzim. But you are allowed to do it for wood, for fuel. And look at the Rashi. This verse is written, you should not burn it. And Rabbi Eliezer says in Zvachim Barakat Teruvos, by the limbs of a sin offering that became mixed up with the limbs of an oil offering, Rabbi Eliezer says you have to put them all above. And I view everything, you burn everything as though it's fuel. Because since you're not intending to burn it, it's not going to be considered like an offering, and you're allowed to do this because of takanas ola. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Whereas the Chachamim argue and say, no, you have to wait for the form of that chatas to, because what happened here was the chatas was mixed up with the ola, so you have to wait for the form of that mixed up animal to change. And then you take it outside the base of mikdash to burn it. Meaning you can't put it up. So Rabbi Eliezer says you put them all on the altar, and you wait. And if it will be a chatas, then you're saying it's being used as a fuel. And if it's an olah, then it can be burnt. Whereas the Chum is saying no, you have to wait for it to become changed its format. So we see that that's what Rabbi Shimon Kazi is saying, that you're bringing it up, this shirayim, to be like fuel, and so that's okay. Gemara says, well, if it would be the offering of Israel, the Gemara says, but hanicha or Rabbi Elazar is only good according to the position of Rabbi Elazar or Rabbi Elazar, depending on the different gears. El Rabbanan, but according to Rabbanan, we say that that's not a good solution. Ma'iko Meimar. What would the Rabbanan say? The Gemara says, well, the Rabbanan would do it like Rabbi Elazar by Rabbi Shimon. They pass like Rabbi Elazar or Shimon, who says, the Tanya Elazar or Shimon says, Akomeitz Karva Atzmo. Rashirayim Espazon al Beis Hadeshin. Rabbi Elazar and Shimon says, Gemara Menachos and Sota, that the komets would be brought by itself, and the shirayim were spread out by the ashes on the floor. So that's what Rabbi Elazar and Shimon says. Where does he say this? Rashi says, Gabi Kohen Hamitame Hektish B'Dalei Dalas, by a Kohen who was Tamei Mikdash, and this is by a carbon of the urine, and he's very poor, and he has to bring what's called a minchas choteh, a mincha of a sinner. And it says about this mincha of the sinner, meaning to say that if this Kohen did this sin, he's like the mincha of Israel. And what does that mean? Just like the mincha of Israel, you do the kmitza, so to the mincha of a sinner, of the Kohanim, you also do the Kmitza. But if that's the case, just like the Mincha of Yisrael, the Shirayim are eaten, you might think that the Kohen also eats this Mincha, says the verse, Kol Minchas Kohen, Kolil Tiyeh. So how do you do it? Okay, so this is what Rabbi Shimon says. Rabbi Shimon says that Kometz Karvatzmo and the Shirayim are brought by themselves. That's what Rabbi Shimon says. But now we see Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and this is what our Gemara's suggestion is. What does Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon do there? Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon says that kometz karvatzon v'shirayim espazron al beis hadeshin. The kometz is brought to shirayim are scattered on the floor by the ashes on the floor of the altar. And so therefore, when the Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Eliezer, they are only arguing by saying that the shirayim are not, and they say that shirayim are brought, but by a mincha of a sinner, of a Kohen, that everybody says that it's capable of brought, but and that's what they say. But here can't be brought because it's a non-Kohen, and so therefore the rabbis say that you would scatter it around. So they only argue by that case, but in this case they would say to scatter it. The Tanya Rabbi Elazar Shimon Omar Kometz Karva Atzmo v'Shirayim Espazon al Beis Hadeshin. Now, if you were Rabbanan, well, Puigi led Rabbi Elazar Shimon El b'Minchas Chotes Shel Kohanim. The rabbis there, they only argue by the mincha choteh of the kohanim because we're not sure we're not sure if it's able to be brought or not. So there they say it could be brought. In this case, the Rabbanan would admit that since it can't be brought, they would say that you scatter it on the floor of the altar, by the foot of the altar you scatter. Okay, so now we're up to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Mishal Shata Acharbawa Shlosha Chadashim. A woman who did not remain after the Mishnah says now her husband died, and she didn't wait 3 months before remarrying, or her husband divorced, doesn't say exactly how. Venice, and the Gemara is going to discuss the scenario, and then after less than 3 months, Venice, she married V'yolda, and then she gave birth. Ve'en Yadu, we don't know in Ben Tisha Larishon if this child is the 9th month from the first father, and Ben Shiva La'achron, or if he's 7 months from the final child. So from the final wife, from the second wife. Hayu Abanim and Arishon. Let's say she has offspring from the first one, Ubanim and Asheni, and she also has a certain offspring from the second one. And now under these circumstances, this suffix, this person, we're not sure if he's from the first husband or the second husband, he dies. So now the brothers come along and they do yibum cholzin. They can only do chalitza, but they cannot do yibum cholzin below miyamim. Meaning to say, they do chalitza. Maybe he is. They have the same father as him, but they don't do yibum because maybe he's only their maternal brother and not their paternal brother, and that's a punishment of kares because you can't do yibum in that circumstance. And also the sons of the second son, they do the same thing. They do chalitza, not yibum. And so too, he has the same concept to them. That what does he do? He does chalitza with them and not even because of the same problem. But now we're on the top of Kuf on the base. But let's say he has brothers. That let's say he has. Let's say he has brothers from the first one and brothers from the second one that are not from the same mother. So look at what Rashi says. Well, who choletz miyabim v'hem echad choletz v'echad miyabim. So under these circumstances, he does chalitza and yibum. Look at Rashi, and what does it mean? The Ashes ben Arishon to the wife of the first son. Im achafu aretov, if his brother is good. V'im lav nachris he etzlo. She is nothing to him. You go and she'ein ach elaho. The lake was fugei b'Yevamos shuk because we don't have to be concerned about Ibam, and then we don't have to be concerned that she's falling to Ibam for somebody else. And so too Ashes ben Achron. So there you can do chalitza or Ibam. In the case where the other person, where that person has one possible brother. So v'hem echad choletz v'echad miyabim. So now we say echad Yisrael. Let's say one of the fathers was an Israelite and one of the fathers was a Kohen. Echad Yisrael v'echad Kohen. So under those circumstances, where one was an Israelite and one was a Kohen, what do we do under those circumstances? So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, no say Isha Ru'uyo a Kohen, since we're not sure if his father is an Israelite or a Kohen, he has to marry a woman who only a Kohen can marry. And he's not allowed to come in contact with the dead because maybe he's a Kohen. And if he does come in contact, we're not going to give him the lashes because maybe he's a Kohen. Because we don't give him lashes because maybe he's not a Kohen. And he can't eat the truma, maybe he's not a Kohen. If he ate it, he doesn't have to pay anyone back because you can't force him to pay money because you're not certainty. So you don't pay back the principal on the 1/5. And so also we say, the Eno Cholek al Agora, and he doesn't get to go to the granary to collect the truma because we're not certain if he's a Kohen. Umochar truma, if he has truma, he has to separate his truma, but then he sells it and he gets to keep the money. And he does not divide up the sacrificial food that's given to him. He doesn't get a share of it. They know snimlo as akadashim. They don't give him the kachim. They mutziin as shalom. But if he got it, they don't take it away from him. To say, earlier we said ein cholek b'kachim kadashim. We had said earlier in the previous Mishnah that it means he doesn't get the portion of the bechor. So, and then the next phrase is he doesn't get the sacrificial food. And some of the 24 gifts of the Kohen was that they get the jaw, the forearm, and the stomach. So he doesn't get that, but he also doesn't have to give it to the Kohen. And if it's his firstborn, since the Kohen has to let it graze until it gets a blemish, and then he can eat it because you can't pull it away from him because you don't know that he's not a Kohen. He has the stringencies of a Kohen and stringencies of an Israelite. If both of them are Kohanim, if both of the fathers were a Kohen, he is going to be a mourner for them, meaning to say he's strict. And so therefore, on the day of his father's death, he's not allowed to eat the kachim. Maybe he's an onain. And so they're going to be an onain on him. And therefore, on that day, both of them cannot eat the kachim. He cannot go to their funeral because maybe they're not his father. Only one of them is father, doesn't know which one. And they can't go to his funeral. Son, he's not allowed, he will not inherit them because maybe he's not their father. And so all the other brothers will push him away. But they can inherit him. Since he's not sure which one is his father, if he strikes them or curses them, he's not going to be able to be held liable because we don't know for sure who the father is. And also, he goes up with their watch when they go to serve, but he doesn't get to take a portion of their food, the sacrificial food that they're handing out. And if both of them were both possible fathers were serving in the same mishmar, then he gets to, in the same watch in the temple, then he serves there, but he only takes one portion. He doesn't take a double portion because he's certainly only there once. Gemara says that in this case, that where he's going to do the chalitza, where if he has the two brothers, first he has to do chalitza to one and only then yibum. If he has paternal brothers from the first one and from the second one that are not from the same mother, that our Mishnah said, then one does chalitza and then one does yibum. He does chalitza to one of the brother that he does chalitza. So our Mishnah said one of them does chalitza and one of them does yibum. That the circumstance there is that first you have to do chalitza and only then can you do yibum. But you can't do yibum at first because we're concerned that maybe this is not actually your brother, and therefore then you're marrying somebody before she does chalitza to the marketplace. That's what the Gemara says. Now Shmuel comes along and tells us the scenario, and the Gemara is going to challenge it. It's going to take us to the end of the page. That Shmuel says, Asar Kohanim Omdim. If there are 10 Kohanim, it doesn't have to be 10, it can be any amount. And one of them we know was the father of the next child, but we don't know which Kohen was the father of the next child. Ubal, so Pirish Hachamim, Ubal, Avad Shasuki. The Avad is called a Shatuki. Shatuki, coming from the word quiet. We quiet him down. The my Shtuki, what does that mean here? What are we quieting him down from? If you want to say, well, guess what? He loses the right to his father's inheritance, or his father's money. Pshita. It's obvious the case. Miyadina navua manu. We have no idea which one of these Kohanim is his father. If you want to say we quiet him down from the laws of the Kahuna, why? He's for sure a Kohen. We know one of those 10 men was his father. Gemara says, "My time, what's the reason why we quiet him down? Because it says we don't want to be a Kohen. Because specifically by Kohen, it's not enough to know that he's a Kohen. You have to know exactly who the father is, and we don't in this case. So Maskat Rav Papa challenged that principle. They have to know that you were not from Haitzalol Zaro Achrav. That you need to know exactly who the father is in order for him to be the Kohen. But Maskat Rav Papa Almeata Gabe Avram by Abraham, it says the same thing. The Siv. It says the same phrase into your seed after you. What does that mean? What's the Torah warning Avram about? So the Gemara says, this is what the Torah is saying. Over this, the Torah is telling Abraham, don't marry an idolatress or a Canaanite, because then your seed will not be considered Jewish. Will not be considered as a descendant of Abraham. Gemara challenges Shmuel's position, Meisvei, because Shmuel said that under those circumstances, we're not going to assume that he's a Kohen if we don't know for sure who the father is. Gemara challenged that. It says in our Mishnah, which we had earlier, in the case where a woman was married to one man and he died, and the other brother came along within 3 months and fathered the child. He didn't wait. The Yavam didn't wait 3 months. We know that the first father was a Kohen. There, the Mishnah said, Rishon Royalios Kohen Gadol, that the first child that's born can even be the Kohen Gadol. And the Gemara is asking, why? We're not sure who the father is. We don't have that. So the Gemara says, okay, this idea that we need to know who the father is rabbinic, is just the Rabbanan. And it's not in the verse, it's just a support. The rabbis made the decree that you're not a father, he's not a Kohen if you were involved in lewd behavior, licentiousness, business, but in the case of the two brothers, the rabbis didn't make the decree because there was no zinus there was no nudity. It's just that the second brother married her, did the yibum before waiting 3 months. Did the rabbis really make such a decree about zinus that the offspring is not a Kohen? Vatanan. Let's go back to our Mishnah. the person didn't wait, the woman didn't wait after her first husband for 3 months. Vinises, and then she got married. Viyolda, and she gave birth. So what does it mean she didn't wait? Mayachar bawa. What does it mean she didn't wait? You ain't machar misas bawa. If you want to say it means she didn't wait after her husband died, it can't be that that's the case. Ema seifa who onein aleim, vehem onein alav. It says he mourns for them and they mourn for him. The laws of Aninus. Now, Bishlam, I understand why this offspring can mourn for them. I understand that we can mourn for them on the same day. Mishkachasla, you can have the following scenario. Tama misle, mishkach. I understand that could be mishkachasla ben asuin. Or we can change the text to be misaso desheni. Maybe it's the in the case of marriage, that what happened? Misaso desheni, the second one died, but we could at samas the common. It was the same day we was collecting the bones of the first one, so he can be a mourner for both of them on the same day. Elohim oner nilalav. How can they mourn for him? Kama misla. If the first one has already died before she married the second one, how could they both be mourning for him on the same day? Or how could they even both be mourning for him? Ela begrusha. Must be that the first one divorced. And what is a mayachar bawa? Achar get bawa. It means that she doesn't wait 3 months after the divorce of her husband. But that can't be the case either. Ema seifa, what does the concluding clause say? Hu ein metame lahem, vehem ein metame lo. He is not allowed to become tameh for them, and they are not allowed to become tameh for him. I understand why in this scenario the two fathers cannot become tameh for him. They don't know if he's their son. But stringency, everyone, maybe they're not his son. What does it mean that the son can't be tameh for their father under these circumstances? I understand maybe why he can't become tameh for the second one. I understand why the second one he can't become tameh. The first one he could become tamei mimanav shach. Either he's his son, he could become tamei. Be bar basra, but if he's the son of the other one, he's not a kohen because the shaber come tamei. The chohu he can become tamei because since his father, the second one, married a divorcee, the offspring of that is no longer a kohen. It's called a halal. Elav must be biznus. It must be that the woman didn't get married to either husband. She to either man. She just had a rude sexual intercourse with them. And what does it mean? My achar bawa. What does it mean? She didn't wait after her bawa. It means achar bawa. She didn't wait between relations, and therefore, under those circumstances, we're going to say we don't know who the father is, and so therefore, v'katani seifa ola b'mishmar shozeh. And yet we still view this offspring as a Kohen. And this is a tiyuf to the Shmuel. This is a refutation of Shmuel. So that's the Gemara. We'll stop there. We'll pick this up, God willing, tonight. Tonight the Daf Yomi, we'll do this again at 8 a.m., but tonight the Daf Yomi is at a special time at 6 p.m.